Welcome back, dear dreamer. Tonight, we drift into the quiet world of the atom, the smallest place where everything begins. It moves without sound, holding together stars, oceans, and every breath you take. What seems invisible is gently shaping the world moment by moment. As you listen, let your thoughts settle like soft dust in still air and allow your mind to sink into rest. If these calming journeys bring you peace, remember to subscribe and tap the like button. Now, let us begin. Everything begins with something so small you can't see it, yet it quietly holds your entire world together. An atom sits in stillness, almost weightless, drifting through space and time. Even the air around you is filled with these silent travelers, moving gently like dust floating in a sunbeam. If you could slow down the universe, you would notice that atoms never truly touch. They only come close enough to create the idea of touch, like two raindrops resting side by side. This quiet distance is what keeps everything stable, from your pillow to the stars above you. Long before anyone knew their name, atoms existed inside ancient starlight. Every atom in your body was once part of a star that lived, burned, and faded long before Earth formed its first oceans. When those stars collapsed, they released their smallest pieces into the dark. These pieces drifted for millions of years until gravity slowly gathered them into planets and breath and living memory. Tonight, the atoms inside you are older than the oldest mountains. They are calm, patient, and unhurried, carrying the history of the universe without making a sound. Deep inside each atom is a quiet space that feels almost like nothing. Most of an atom is empty, a peaceful gap where energy rests with no noise or pressure. If an atom were the size of a stadium, the nucleus would be smaller than a grain of sand. Everything else is silence, waiting gently in the dark. Electrons don't orbit like tiny planets. They exist more like soft clouds, appearing and disappearing in quiet uncertainty. This delicate stillness is what keeps matter from collapsing, the universe balancing itself with calm, invisible motion. In the center of an atom, the nucleus holds its particles together with a force stronger than anything else in nature. It is called the strong force, yet it works without a sound. It keeps protons close, even though they try to push apart. Without this silent strength, nothing solid would exist, and every object would fall back into a quiet sea of scattered particles. Black holes use a different kind of pull, so intense that even light cannot escape. Yet both the atom's center and the black hole share the same idea: gravity and force holding the universe in place. The word atom comes from ancient Greece, where philosophers imagined something so small it could never be broken. They didn't know about electrons or nuclei. They only believed that somewhere beneath the shifting world was a quiet, unchanging core. Centuries later, scientists discovered that atoms can split, releasing the energy stored for billions of years. But even with all our knowledge, most of the atom remains mysterious. It reminds us that the universe keeps its secrets gently, revealing them slowly, like a whispered story meant to be heard only when the mind is calm enough to listen. Every atom carries a quiet memory of the universe cooling down after the Big Bang. In the first moments of time, everything was too hot and too bright for atoms to exist. As the universe expanded, the heat faded like a distant echo, and tiny particles began to slow down. Hydrogen was the first to form, simple and calm, becoming the gentle foundation for stars. When you breathe tonight, most of the atoms entering your lungs are the same ancient hydrogen created in that early silence, unchanged for almost 14 billion years. Inside stars, atoms do not rush or collide in chaos. emerge slowly under steady pressure, creating new elements one by one. Helium forms first, then carbon, then oxygen, building the same substances that make clouds, oceans, and living skin. When a star grows old, it releases these atoms into space with the softness of scattered ash. They drift through galaxies like silent seeds waiting to settle. The iron in your blood was born in a star that ended its life in quiet brilliance. Every heartbeat is a small reminder of that distant beginning. Even the smallest movement of an electron is guided by probabilities instead of certainty. Quantum physics suggests that particles are never truly still, yet their motion is gentle and balanced. Instead of spinning in neat paths, electrons appear in soft regions, like mist forming around a lake at dawn. This uncertainty is not chaotic. It is calm and natural, a reminder that the universe does not need perfect order to remain stable. Atoms hold their shape through quiet patterns that repeat without effort. If you traveled toward the edge of a black hole, atoms would begin to stretch under the pull of gravity. Yet before they reach the point of no return, time itself would appear to slow down. To an outside observer, the fall would look frozen, as if the universe refused to rush anything, even in its most powerful places. Black holes do not destroy atoms instantly. They reshape them slowly, following the same laws that guide stars and galaxies. Even in darkness, the universe acts with patience. On Earth, atoms move gently through water, air, and stone. They are exchanged when you touch the surface of a table or drink from a glass. Nothing you see is ever made of brand new atoms. The same particles are reused endlessly, traveling from plants to animals to clouds and back again. This quiet recycling has been happening since the first raindrop touched ancient rock. Tonight, the atoms in your room have passed through countless forms without hurry, always finding their place with steady ease. When an atom absorbs energy, it becomes gently excited, like a ripple moving across still water. The electron shifts to a higher level, but it never holds that energy for long. It slowly releases the extra light and returns to its peaceful state. This quiet exchange is happening all around you, even in the glow of a soft lamp at night. Every warm color you see is the result of atoms calming themselves, returning to balance without sound or struggle. Light itself is a reminder that the universe prefers rest. Some atoms are stable for billions of years, while others decay slowly over time. Radioactive decay is often imagined as violent, but in reality, most of it happens with a whisper. An atom releases a tiny particle and becomes something new, like a leaf falling gently from a branch. This change helps scientists trace the age of rocks, fossils, and ancient landscapes. The same slow process measures the age of the Earth, revealing a history written not in words, but in quiet transformations that never disturb the world around them. If you could shrink yourself to the size of an atom, you would see no solid surfaces at all. Matter would look like soft clouds of probability, overlapping without touching. The solid world you feel is the result of invisible forces pushing gently against each other, like two magnets refusing to meet. This invisible cushion is what keeps your feet on the ground and the planets in their orbits. Stability is not created by contact, but by space maintained in perfect silence. In deep space, atoms can travel for millions of years without meeting another. A single hydrogen atom in a vast galaxy drifts like a lone traveler across an endless desert, yet it is never truly lost. Gravity guides it slowly toward stars, nebulae, and new beginnings. When it finally joins others, it becomes part of something larger, contributing to light, warmth, and life. Even the smallest particle has a place in the universe, found through patience rather than speed. The first atoms that formed the universe were simple, but over time, stars forged heavier ones through fusion. Gold, silver, and platinum were created only in rare cosmic events, like the merging of neutron stars. When those collisions happened, they sent precious atoms across space with quiet brilliance. The jewelry worn today carries pieces of those ancient moments. Something so small can hold a story older than the planet itself, resting quietly against a heartbeat that never knows the weight of its history. Not all atoms exist in the same form across the universe. In the centers of neutron stars, ordinary atoms are pressed so tightly that their structure disappears, leaving only dense particles packed together. If a teaspoon of this material could rest on Earth, it would weigh more than a mountain, yet it remains motionless in space, held in perfect stillness by gravity. This quiet pressure reminds us that even the most intense forces can exist without sound, shaping matter in silence, far beyond anything we can imagine. On our planet, atoms join together to make molecules through simple attraction. They do not lock into place with force. They share electrons gently, creating bonds that can last for centuries or break with the softness of melting ice. Water is one of the simplest examples, formed from just 3 atoms, yet it can carve valleys, carry clouds, and sustain life without effort. The gentleness of its structure allows it to shift between liquid, solid, and vapor, always adapting without resistance. Every breath you take is a quiet exchange of atoms between you and the world. Oxygen enters your body, travels through blood, and leaves again as carbon dioxide. None of these atoms stay with you forever. They move on to trees, oceans, and distant skies. A single atom you breathe tonight may one day become part of a leaf, a snowflake, or a cloud drifting over a silent mountain. The universe is always sharing, never holding, letting matter move freely without hurry. In the early days of science, people believed atoms were tiny solid spheres. It took centuries of calm observation to reveal their true nature. Experiments with gold foil showed that most of an atom is empty space, and its center is small and dense. This discovery changed everything without making a sound. Knowledge does not always arrive with excitement. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a soft light turning on in a dark room, revealing what was always there. Atoms inside your body are constantly in motion, even while you sleep. They vibrate gently within cells, keeping life steady and warm. This motion never pauses, yet it does not disturb you. It is calm and balanced, like the steady rhythm of a distant tide. While your mind rests, your atoms continue their silent work, maintaining the body without asking for attention. Rest is not the absence of activity. It is the harmony of motion that feels like stillness. Some atoms form crystals that grow slowly and quietly beneath the earth. Deep underground, minerals arrange themselves in perfect patterns without any rush. A diamond forms over millions of years in complete darkness, never seeing light until it reaches the surface. Its strength comes from carbon atoms holding each other gently in a repeating structure. Nothing in nature forces this to happen quickly. Even the hardest materials begin with patient stillness. In space, atoms can freeze onto tiny dust grains and wait for thousands of years. These grains drift through cold nebulae where sunlight never reaches. When a new star is born, the heat gently warms the frozen atoms, releasing them back into space like soft breath. Some of these atoms eventually become part of comets, carrying ancient material across the solar system. Every time a comet passes Earth, it leaves a quiet trail of particles older than the planet itself. Inside a living cell, Atoms follow instructions written in DNA. They arrange themselves into proteins with delicate precision, folding into shapes that allow the body to function. This process does not need awareness or thought. It happens naturally, guided by chemistry that has remained unchanged for billions of years. Life is not built with noise or force. It grows through tiny interactions that work smoothly in silence. The sunlight that warms the earth begins with atoms inside the sun, joining together through fusion. Each reaction releases a small amount of energy, but it takes millions of years for that energy to reach the surface. By the time sunlight touches your skin, it has traveled through space for 8 minutes. Something that began in the quiet heart of a star ends as gentle warmth on a peaceful evening. Even when an atom is part of solid rock, it is never completely still. Its particles vibrate softly, held in place by forces that act like invisible springs. When the temperature rises, the vibrations increase, and the rock expands without breaking. When the air cools, everything contracts again in silence. The world you see feels solid and unmoving, yet beneath the surface, atoms are always shifting with calm, balanced motion. Every atom has a tiny fingerprint called a spectrum. When it absorbs or releases light, it creates thin lines that are always the same for that element. Astronomers use these quiet patterns to study stars that are too far to touch. By looking at the light from distant galaxies, they can tell what atoms are present even when the space between is silent and cold. The universe leaves clues without speaking, and atoms carry those clues across billions of years. In the vacuum of space, atoms do not collide the way they do on Earth. They drift with almost no resistance, moving through darkness as if floating in a calm sea. A single atom can travel for centuries without meeting another. Yet this emptiness is not lonely. It is part of the balance that allows galaxies to spread and breathe. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is motion that does not disturb anything around it. Some atoms form gases that rise gently through the atmosphere. Helium is so light that it escapes Earth's gravity over time, drifting slowly into space. Once it leaves, it never returns. The universe keeps it without noise or force. This slow disappearance shows that not everything in nature is permanent. Even the softest changes can last forever, happening so quietly that no one notices. The atoms in ancient artifacts have not changed since they were formed. When historians examine pottery or bones, they look at the atoms inside to understand how long they have existed. The passing of time does not rush them. It only records itself through slow, steady decay. History is stored not in loud events, but in the patient behavior of particles that never hurry. Deep in the ocean, atoms move through saltwater currents, carried by tides that have repeated for millions of years. When waves crash at the surface, the sound is loud and brief, but below the surface, everything returns to stillness. Atoms drift with the same gentle rhythm they have always known. Even in places that feel wild, the smallest parts of nature remain calm. When atoms join to form air, they spread out with gentle spacing, allowing you to breathe without noticing the movement. The atmosphere around the planet is held in place by gravity, but the atoms inside it drift freely, bumping into each other with the lightest touch. This quiet motion creates wind, weather, and seasons, yet each individual particle moves without intention. The world changes because of countless tiny actions, all happening calmly and without sound. In the quiet space between the nucleus and electrons, energy exists in small packets called quanta. These amounts cannot be divided further, no matter how hard we try. nature works with limits that feel soft and invisible, guiding every change with precision. Even the simplest transition inside an atom follows rules that have never been broken. The universe does not need supervision. It maintains order through patterns that repeat gently across time. Some atoms release warmth when they come together, while others absorb heat and cool their surroundings. This balance is the reason ice forms at night and melts under the morning sun. Temperature is not created by noise or pressure. It is the result of atoms moving faster or slower, like a crowd that quietly shifts its pace. Warmth is motion. Cold is calm. Both exist without effort. In ancient volcanic rock, atoms have remained locked in place for millions of years. They have survived earthquakes, floods, and changing climates without altering their structure. Time does not erase them. It simply passes around them, leaving a record in silent layers. When scientists study these rocks, they read the story of the planet written in atoms that have waited patiently beneath the surface. Far beyond our galaxy, atoms gather into clouds that glow faintly with starlight. These nebulae stretch across light years, shaped by gravity so gentle it cannot be felt. Over ages, the clouds slowly condense, and new stars begin in silence. Creation does not arrive with noise. It unfolds gradually, like a breath being drawn before a dream. Even the birth of a star is guided by calm, steady movement. Every atom has a gentle rhythm inside it, created by the balance of positive and negative charges. These forces do not clash. They hold each other in quiet harmony, the way the moon and earth stay connected without ever touching. This balance allows matter to remain steady, from the softness of a feather to the weight of a mountain. Stability is not strength expressed loudly. It is the quiet agreement between particles that never grow tired. When lightning flashes across the sky, it rearranges atoms in the air for only a moment. Nitrogen and oxygen form new molecules that drift down into the soil with rain. Plants use these atoms to grow, and animals later receive them through food. A single spark becomes part of life without leaving a trace of the noise that created it. Even powerful events settle into calm patterns once they reach the smallest scales. In the vacuum of a black hole's surroundings, atoms begin to glow as they heat up. This light is called the event horizon's whisper, a final shimmer before the particles disappear from view. To the universe, nothing is lost. Energy changes form and continues peacefully beyond what we can observe. The unknown does not have to be frightening. It can simply be another quiet place where matter rests. Ancient civilizations used materials made of atoms they never understood. Clay pots, bronze tools, and glass beads all relied on the behavior of elements shaped by fire and cooling air. Without knowing the science, people learned to work with the natural calmness of matter. History is filled with discoveries that arrived slowly, guided by observation rather than urgency. The world has always been shaped by patience. Inside your brain, atoms help carry gentle electrical signals from one cell to another. These signals create thoughts, memories, and dreams. They move with incredible speed, yet you feel none of it. Even while you sleep, the atoms continue their work without disturbing your rest. Your mind floats, your breath slows, and the smallest particles maintain the quiet spaces that let you drift into deeper peace. Deep beneath frozen lakes, atoms move slowly through solid ice, held in place by gentle bonds. Even in the coldest temperatures on Earth, they never stop drifting. Their motion becomes softer, almost like a quiet heartbeat resting under winter snow. When spring arrives and the ice melts, the same atoms return to flowing water without resistance. Nature changes form without urgency, reminding us that nothing solid lasts forever. Some atoms exist only for a fraction of a second before transforming into something else. These rare particles are created in powerful cosmic events, but disappear almost immediately. Their short lives are not chaotic. They follow precise laws, transitioning smoothly into more stable forms. Even the briefest existence in the universe happens with order, not noise. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes part of a longer, quieter story. On distant planets, atoms combine into minerals we have never seen on Earth. They form under unfamiliar pressure and temperature, creating colors and textures that remain hidden beneath alien skies. Although no one has touched them, these atoms exist with the same calm behavior found here. The universe does not change its rules from one world to another. Stillness and balance remain the common language of matter. Inside a candle flame, atoms release energy in soft waves of light and heat. Wax molecules break apart and rearrange into water vapor and carbon dioxide. The flame flickers, but the chemistry inside it is steady and controlled. When the candle goes out, the process stops without a sound. What remains is warmth slowly fading into the room, a gentle reminder that even fire follows quiet patterns. Every atom in your bones was once part of something else. Some came from ancient oceans, others from volcanic ash or distant stars. They have traveled through countless forms before becoming part of you. One day, they will continue their journey, returning to soil, air, or water. Nothing in the universe stays in the same place forever. Matter only pauses for a while, resting before it moves on with peaceful continuity. In the quiet vacuum between galaxies, some atoms carry tiny magnetic moments that align with cosmic fields. These moments are so gentle that they cannot be felt, yet they help scientists map invisible structures in space. The universe leaves faint signatures in the smallest particles, like soft footprints across an endless desert. Even in silence, atoms communicate through patterns that remain steady over billions of years. When atoms form glass, they arrange themselves without a strict pattern. Unlike crystals, they do not create repeating shapes. Instead, they freeze in place while still disordered, like water turning solid before it has time to organize. This frozen randomness allows glass to stay clear and smooth, letting light pass through untouched. Transparency is not created by perfection. It is created by stillness that never settles fully into one form. In deserts, grains of sand are made from atoms that have survived heat, wind, and time. Each grain is worn down slowly, becoming smoother with every movement. Yet the atoms inside remain unchanged, holding their structure through centuries of drifting. Even when storms shift entire dunes overnight, the smallest particles stay calm. Change happens on the surface. The foundations remain quiet. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, atoms endure pressure greater than any place on Earth. Yet the water remains in liquid form, and life continues in darkness. The strength of atoms does not come from resisting force, but from the balance of their internal structure. No matter how deep the ocean becomes, the smallest particles follow the same rules they obey in open air. Stability exists even where light cannot reach. In ancient stardust collected from meteorites, atoms carry isotopes that are older than the solar system. These rare signatures allow scientists to trace their origin to stars that died before the sun was born. Holding such dust is like holding time itself, quietly preserved in microscopic grains. The universe does not erase its past. It stores it gently inside particles that drift across space until they find a resting place. When an atom loses or gains an electron, it becomes charged, yet the change happens without disturbance. These ions move quietly through oceans, guiding the salt water's balance. They drift in and out of shells, corals, and living cells without forcing their way in. The sea's chemistry depends on this soft exchange, a silent conversation between particles that keeps entire ecosystems calm and stable across millions of years. In ancient stars, some atoms were created through a process called neutron capture. A nucleus slowly absorbs neutrons until it transforms into a new element. This happens so gradually that even the star does not notice the change. When the star eventually releases these atoms into space, they float into newborn planets like soft seeds carried by wind. Many rare elements on Earth began as quiet additions inside a distant star's core. Inside your bloodstream, calcium atoms help muscles relax after every movement. They enter and leave cells with precise timing, allowing your body to shift from activity to rest. This happens even while you sleep. The smallest particles maintain balance without waking you, easing the body into deeper stillness. Rest is possible because atoms understand when to hold and when to release, following rhythms older than human life. Near the edges of black holes, scientists believe that virtual particles appear and disappear in pairs. One falls inward while the other escapes as faint radiation. This process is so gentle that it takes billions of years for a black hole to lose even a small amount of mass. The universe does not rush its endings. Even the most mysterious objects fade with patience, giving energy back to space slowly and silently. The atoms in trees rise from the soil and air, forming wood that grows ring by ring. Each ring marks a year of quiet expansion, influenced by sunlight, rain, and seasons. When a tree falls, the atoms return to the ground and begin their cycle again. Nothing in nature is permanent, yet nothing is lost. Matter moves in circles, resting in one form, before continuing its journey with calm continuity. Even the simplest atom, hydrogen, can join with itself to form quiet clouds that drift between stars. These clouds look dark from a distance, but inside them, the temperature is so cold that atoms barely move. For millions of years, they rest in stillness until gravity gathers them into dense pockets. From this silence, new stars begin. Creation starts not with noise, but with atoms waiting patiently in the dark. When atoms form metal, their electrons move freely, allowing electricity to flow without force. This gentle movement is what powers the lights in a quiet room or keeps a heartbeat monitor glowing softly at night. Electricity is often imagined as violent, but inside the metal, electrons drift like calm travelers following a shared path. Technology depends on the peaceful cooperation of particles too small to see. In distant galaxies, atoms emit light stretched into longer wavelengths as space expands. This effect is called redshift, and it happens slowly, like a note lowering in pitch over billions of years. Scientists use this soft shift to understand how far galaxies have traveled. The universe keeps track of time without clocks or sound. It measures its history through gentle changes in light. Inside volcanic lava, atoms move freely in liquid rock. When the lava cools, they settle into solid form, locking into position without any rush. Entire mountains are built from this quiet transition, rising over ages rather than moments. The world that feels permanent beneath your feet began with atoms finding stillness after a long journey from heat to rest. The atoms in your heartbeat were once scattered across space, waiting for a place to belong. Now they move in harmony, helping blood flow with steady rhythm. Even as you sleep, they continue their work without asking for attention. The smallest particles create the feeling of safety that lets the body relax. Peace is not the absence of activity. It is motion that supports life without demanding awareness. In ancient meteorites that fall to Earth, atoms remain unchanged from the earliest days of the solar system. When scientists study them, they are looking at matter that formed before any planet existed. These tiny pieces spent billions of years drifting through space without direction, waiting for gravity to guide them. Holding such material is like holding a quiet memory of a time before sunlight touched the Earth. Inside warm clouds of gas near newborn stars, atoms glow softly as they absorb and release energy. The light they create is faint and delicate, almost invisible to the human eye. Telescopes capture these gentle colors, revealing shapes that look like feathers and waves. The universe paints its largest landscapes using particles too small to notice, working slowly in silence. Some atoms in your body are part of water that has existed on Earth since its earliest oceans. They have moved through rain, rivers, and ice without being destroyed. Water only changes its form, never its basic structure. A single atom in a glass you drink tonight may have once floated inside a prehistoric sea or drifted as vapor above ancient forests. The continuity of nature is built from these quiet returns. In the vacuum chamber of a laboratory, scientists can cool atoms to temperatures close to absolute zero. At this point, their motion slows almost to a stop, and they begin to behave as a single wave instead of individual particles. This state is called a Bose-Einstein condensate, and it shows how calm matter can become when given space and stillness. Even the laws of physics reveal new behavior when the world grows quiet. Atoms inside mountains hold the minerals that shape landscapes. Over millions of years, weather wears the rock down grain by grain, yet the atoms inside remain stable. Rivers carry them to the sea, where they settle into sand and eventually become stone again. The Earth reshapes itself through slow cycles that never demand force. Change is patient, and time works with gentle persistence rather than urgency. Inside the quiet glow of distant nebulae, atoms join to form simple molecules like hydrogen and carbon monoxide. These molecules drift through space for millions of years, untouched by heat or wind. When they finally enter a newborn solar system, they become part of planets, moons, and icy comets. The universe builds complex worlds from the softest beginnings, using patience instead of pressure. When atoms form the air inside a sealed room, they spread out evenly without needing guidance. They do not crowd or cling to one another. Instead, they balance themselves naturally, creating a calm and breathable space. Even when you sleep, the atoms continue to move with gentle rhythm, allowing every breath to arrive and leave without effort. Comfort is made from countless tiny motions you never feel. Some atoms inside your body were once part of ancient plants that absorbed sunlight through photosynthesis. The energy stored in those atoms now supports your heartbeat, your thoughts, and your dreams. Every moment of rest is powered by a quiet history that began long before humans existed. Life continues because matter shares its energy in steady, peaceful exchanges. On the moon, atoms are exposed to constant solar wind, carrying particles from the sun that settle into the surface. With no atmosphere to protect it, the lunar soil slowly gathers these atoms over billions of years. Yet the process is silent and gentle, changing the surface grain by grain. Even in a place without air, water, or sound, the universe continues its work with the same calm consistency. In deep caves where sunlight never reaches, atoms form crystals drop by drop as water moves through stone. Stalactites grow only a fraction of an inch each century, building their shape through slow deposition. Entire formations take thousands of years to appear, yet the atoms never rush. Nature creates beauty through time, allowing stillness to shape what movement cannot. In the silent darkness between galaxies, atoms of hydrogen gather into long, invisible threads called cosmic filaments. These structures stretch across the universe like quiet bridges, connecting clusters of stars without ever being seen by the human eye. Gravity guides the atoms slowly, shaping the largest patterns in existence through motion, so gentle it takes billions of years to notice. Even the universe's biggest designs begin with particles that move in silence. When atoms enter the atmosphere as tiny grains of space dust, they burn for only a moment and then drift to the ground as fine ash. Most people never realize that the dust settling on rooftops and fields sometimes comes from ancient comets and distant planets. These atoms have traveled longer than any human civilization, yet they arrive without sound, becoming part of Earth as naturally as rain. Inside your eyes, atoms in light-sensitive molecules rearrange themselves when a photon touches them. This small change allows you to see shapes, colors, and movement. Vision feels instant, but it depends on atoms shifting in silence, responding to light that has crossed unimaginable distances. Even the stars you observe at night reveal themselves through quiet chemistry happening inside a single cell. In the deepest layers of Earth's core, atoms are packed tightly under intense heat and pressure. Yet the iron remains solid, held together by strong forces that prevent the atoms from breaking apart. This silent stability creates the magnetic field that protects the planet from solar radiation. The shield surrounding Earth is not created by noise or force, but by particles maintaining balance far below the surface. Some atoms inside ancient ice cores hold tiny bubbles of air from thousands of years ago. Scientists study these trapped molecules to understand past climates, listening to Earth's history through particles that never changed. The atoms waited in silence beneath layers of snow until they were brought back to light. Time does not erase their story. It simply preserves it gently, layer by layer. When sunlight passes through the atmosphere, atoms in the air scatter blue light, more than any other color. This quiet interaction is what makes the sky appear soft and blue during the day. Nothing dramatic happens in this process. Photons simply change direction as they meet tiny particles, filling the world with gentle color that feels calm and familiar. The beauty of the sky comes from the smallest exchanges, carried out in silence. Deep beneath the ocean floor, atoms and minerals hold heat from Earth's interior. This warmth moves upwards slowly, rising through rock and water with steady patience. Hydrothermal vents release the heat into the sea, supporting life in complete darkness. The creatures living there rely on chemistry instead of sunlight, proof that atoms can sustain life even where silence is absolute and light has never arrived. In quiet laboratories, scientists trap single atoms using beams of light. These atoms hover in place without touching any surface, held steady by gentle forces. By studying them, researchers learn more about time, motion, and the universe itself. Some of the most precise clocks ever made depend on the vibrations of atoms, ticking so consistently that they lose only a second over millions of years. Even the measurement of time rests on stillness. Inside your lungs, atoms from the air dissolve into blood with every breath. They travel through your body without making a sound, entering cells that use them for energy and balance. As you exhale, different atoms return to the world, continuing a cycle that never stops. Breathing feels effortless because atoms move with perfect cooperation, allowing life to happen quietly with every moment of rest. On frozen moons like Europa and Enceladus, atoms of water and salt lie beneath thick layers of ice. Scientists believe oceans may exist there, hidden from view and untouched for billions of years. If life exists in these distant seas, it would be supported by the same simple atoms found on Earth. The universe does not rush its discoveries. It keeps possibilities waiting in silence until the right moment arrives. Some atoms can store energy for long periods before releasing it as faint light. This gentle glow is called phosphorescence, and it can be seen in minerals that shine softly after darkness falls. The light fades slowly, like a memory drifting away. Nothing burns or sparks. The atoms simply release what they once absorbed, returning to their natural state without urgency. In the quiet stillness of polar ice, atoms and snowflakes arrange themselves into delicate patterns. No two shapes are the same, yet each one forms through the same peaceful process. Water molecules settle into place as the air cools, creating crystals that fall silently from the sky. A single snowflake carries billions of atoms working together without noise, forming beauty that melts without leaving a trace. When atoms form clay beneath the ground, they hold water between tiny layers. Over time, pressure turns the soft material into stone, recording ancient footsteps and fossils. Even after millions of years, the atoms remain in their original arrangement, preserving moments that would otherwise be forgotten. The Earth keeps its history not in sound, but in quiet structures built from patient particles. In distant regions of space, atoms drift through cosmic clouds so cold that they barely move. These clouds are the birthplace of organic molecules, the building blocks of life. Without heat or light, chemistry unfolds slowly, joining simple atoms into more complex forms. Life may begin not in dramatic explosions, but in silent places where matter rests long enough to change. Inside your heart, potassium and sodium atoms help maintain a steady rhythm. They move in and out of cells with precise timing, allowing each beat to follow the next. You never feel these exchanges, yet they continue every moment of your life, even while you sleep. The calm pulse that guides your body depends on the smallest particles working together in perfect peace. When atoms come together to form salt, they arrange themselves in tiny cubes that repeat in perfect order. This pattern remains unchanged whether the salt is deep in the ocean or resting quietly on a kitchen table. Even when waves crash and tides rise, the atomic structure stays calm. Order at the smallest scale allows the world to feel stable, no matter how much movement surrounds it. In the calm darkness of interstellar space, atoms are exposed to cosmic rays that pass through them without leaving visible marks. These rays travel across the universe for millions of years, moving through planets, stars, and even living bodies. Most go unnoticed, yet they help scientists understand the shape and age of the universe. Information can travel without sound, carried by particles that never pause. Inside volcanic glass, atoms cool so quickly that they do not have time to form crystals. Instead, they freeze in place in whatever arrangement they held at that moment. Obsidian remains smooth and reflective because of this sudden stillness. Nature can create clarity through both speed and patience, depending on the conditions around it. The result is a material that has stayed unchanged for thousands of years. Some atoms inside your body help repair cells during rest. While you sleep, proteins are rebuilt and tissues are restored through quiet chemical reactions. Nothing feels different on the surface, yet deep inside, atoms rearrange themselves with steady precision. Healing is not loud or dramatic. It is a slow return to balance, guided by particles that follow their ancient instructions without effort. In the rings around Saturn, Atoms of ice and dust orbit the planet with gentle rhythm. They move in thin bands that stay separated over time, creating patterns that look like grooves carved into space. These rings are made of countless small fragments, each reflecting sunlight softly as it turns. From a distance, the movement appears frozen, yet every particle continues its path in peaceful motion. Deep inside coral reefs, calcium atoms slowly join to form limestone structures that last for thousands of years. Each fragment begins with a tiny exchange between water and living organisms. The process is gentle and unhurried, building entire underwater cities from quiet chemistry. Even after the coral stops growing, the atoms remain in place, holding the memory of a world shaped by stillness. When atoms form oil deep underground, they come from ancient plants and animals that settled into sediment millions of years ago. Heat and pressure transformed them slowly, without fire or movement. The atoms waited in darkness until they became part of liquid energy stored beneath the Earth's surface. Nature often creates its resources not through sudden events, but through time that passes unnoticed. In the silent vastness of outer space, some atoms freeze onto comets for billions of years. When a comet travels close to the sun, these atoms evaporate into a glowing tail that stretches across the sky. The transformation is smooth and delicate, happening one particle at a time. A single streak of light becomes a reminder that even the smallest changes can create beauty. Inside your skin, carbon atoms form long chains that give strength and flexibility. These chains repair themselves gently when damaged, replacing old cells with new ones. You never feel the process, even though it continues every moment of your life. The softness of your touch is supported by countless atoms working quietly behind the scenes. In the calm depths of frozen soil called permafrost, atoms remain locked in ice for tens of thousands of years. When the ground slowly thaws, the atoms return to the air and water, continuing a cycle that began before human history. Nothing in nature is trapped forever. Matter waits patiently until conditions change, then moves on without resistance. In the quiet layers of ancient mountains, atoms of quartz hold steady even as entire continents shift around them. They endure pressure and time without changing their structure, allowing geologists to read the history of the Earth through minerals that have remained untouched for millions of years. Strength at the smallest scale is often silent, built from stability rather than force. When atoms form the gentle surface of a pearl, they layer themselves one upon another inside a shell. Each layer is thin as a whisper, yet over time, they create something smooth and luminous. No rushing is involved. The pearl grows through patience, shaped by calm water and slow movement. Beauty often begins where time is allowed to unfold quietly. In distant galaxies, atoms collide in clouds warmed by newborn stars. These collisions create simple organic molecules that drift across space. Some may eventually land on planets where they become part of soil, oceans, or even living cells. Life's building blocks are carried not by noise or speed, but by particles that move through the universe with gentle persistence. Inside your bones, phosphorus and calcium atoms arrange themselves in strong yet flexible patterns. This balance allows you to stand, walk, and rest without feeling the smallest exchanges happening beneath the surface. Even when you are completely still, atoms continue their work, renewing tiny structures so slowly that the change remains invisible. On the surface of Mars, atoms of iron react with the thin atmosphere, forming rust-colored dust that covers the planet. The transformation took millions of years, turning the landscape into shades of red without sound or motion. A world can change its appearance through the quiet behavior of atoms, proving that even the most dramatic colors come from silent processes. When atoms form the surface of frozen lakes on distant moons, they create ice so hard it can support mountains. Beneath this silent shell, liquid water may move slowly for centuries without rising to the surface. The atoms holding the ice together remain steady in temperatures far colder than anything on Earth. Stillness becomes a form of strength, allowing entire worlds to stay unchanged across deep time. Inside gentle breezes, nitrogen and oxygen atoms glide through the air with effortless motion. They never travel in straight lines. Instead, they drift, collide softly, and move on, creating patterns that are always changing, yet always calm. What feels like a quiet wind against your skin is made from countless particles moving in harmony, never rushing and never stopping. Some atoms in ancient trees carry carbon that once existed in the atmosphere during the age of dinosaurs. These atoms were absorbed through leaves, became part of wood, and remained there long after entire species disappeared. When the tree falls and returns to the soil, the atoms continue their journey. Nature keeps its memories in cycles rather than endings. In calm laboratory conditions, scientists can watch atoms form thin layers one at a time on smooth surfaces. This process, called atomic deposition, allows materials to grow with perfect precision. Microchips and delicate sensors rely on this slow and orderly assembly. Even the most advanced technology depends on the patient cooperation of particles too small to see. At the edges of auroras near Earth's poles, atoms in the atmosphere become excited by particles from the sun. As they return to their resting state, they release soft waves of light that fill the sky with green and violet colors. The display looks powerful, but at its core, it is a gentle exchange of energy between atoms in space, creating beauty through quiet motion. In the soft glow of candlelight, atoms from warm air rise slowly toward the ceiling. Cooler atoms sink in their place, creating a quiet circulation that continues long after the flame has gone out. The room settles into stillness, yet the air remains alive with tiny movements you never feel. Comfort is created by balance, not silence, and even the calmest spaces are supported by atoms in motion. When atoms form granite deep underground, they cool so gradually that large crystals have time to grow. These crystals hold their shape for millions of years, resisting heat, pressure, and erosion. Mountains built from this stone stand tall not because they are unbreakable, but because their atoms remain arranged in stable patterns. Endurance often comes from quiet order, not strength displayed on the surface. In the calm atmosphere of Venus's upper clouds, atoms form droplets of sulfuric acid that float like mist. Although the planet below is harsh and heated, these high layers remain soft and silent. The contrast shows that even the most intense worlds have gentle places where atoms drift without disturbance. Peace can exist in unexpected corners of the universe. Inside your muscles, tiny ions help release tension after movement. As the body relaxes, atoms shift back into resting positions, allowing warmth to spread gently through your limbs. This transition happens without sound, guiding the body towards sleep. Rest is not a sudden change, but a slow settling of particles finding harmony within you. When snow settles on quiet fields, each flake contains air trapped between its atoms. This soft structure absorbs sound, making the world feel hushed after a fresh snowfall. Footsteps become muted, and distant noises fade away. The silence of winter is not empty. It is created by countless atoms working together to hold the world in gentle stillness. In the quiet dust that settles on forgotten bookshelves, atoms cling lightly to surfaces through gentle forces called van der Waals interactions. Nothing binds them permanently. A soft breeze can lift them back into the air, beginning their journey again. Even stillness contains movement at the smallest scale, reminding us that rest does not mean the end of motion, only a slower rhythm. When atoms form the shells of tiny sea creatures, they arrange themselves into patterns that repeat with delicate precision. Long after the creatures are gone, their shells become part of limestone cliffs that rise above the ocean. Entire coastlines are built from atoms that once floated in warm waves, showing how the quiet work of life shapes the world long after sound has faded. In the upper atmosphere, oxygen atoms split apart under sunlight, then come together again as ozone. This thin layer shields the planet from harmful radiation without drawing attention to itself. Every moment of protection depends on silent reactions happening above our sight. Safety can come from processes we never notice, carried out by particles that simply do what they have always done. Inside volcanic springs, atoms dissolve into hot water and rise to the surface in gentle bubbles. When they escape into the air, they leave behind minerals that settle into colorful layers. These pools change their appearance slowly, shifting shades across decades. The beauty seen today is the result of countless tiny exchanges, each one quiet enough to go unnoticed. At the edge of expanding galaxies, atoms move apart as space itself stretches. They are not pushed or pulled. The distance between them increases naturally, like ink spreading slowly through water. The universe grows without force, guided by laws that unfold with patience. Even the largest changes happen softly, allowing everything to drift into the future without hurry. Inside ancient glaciers, atoms of trapped air remain unchanged for tens of thousands of years. These tiny pockets hold the breath of distant climates, preserving moments from a world that no longer exists. When the ice melts, the atoms return to the atmosphere without any sound, continuing a journey that began long before human history. Time is stored quietly, waiting until conditions allow it to move again. When atoms form soap bubbles, they stretch into thin layers that shimmer with shifting colors. The film is only a few molecules thick, yet it holds together through gentle forces. As the bubble floats, light reflects from its surface in soft patterns before it finally disappears. Nothing breaks sharply. The structure simply relaxes back into air and water, reminding us that beauty can be brief and peaceful. Deep in Earth's mantle, atoms of iron and magnesium flow slowly like thick liquid rock. They move over millions of years, carrying heat toward the surface. This slow motion causes continents to drift, oceans to widen, and mountains to rise. The planet changes not through sudden events, but through steady movement hidden far below. Even the ground beneath us is shaped by quiet processes. In calm, freshwater lakes, atoms settle into layers of sediment that build up grain by grain. Each layer records a different season, a different year, a different climate. When scientists study these sediments, they uncover the story of rainfall, temperature, and life from long ago. The lake never tries to preserve anything. It simply allows atoms to fall into place, creating memory through stillness. Inside the soft glow of morning mist, water molecules cling gently to dust and pollen in the air. As the sun rises, the warmth gives the atoms enough energy to separate, and the mist fades without leaving a trace. The world becomes clear again, as if nothing happened. Change often arrives and disappears quietly, guided by particles moving in harmony with light. When atoms form the minerals inside sand, they are carried by rivers to the ocean and eventually settle along the shore. Waves smooth each grain with gentle motion, shaping coastlines one fragment at a time. Nothing about this process is rushed. The landscape changes through quiet persistence, guided by particles that have traveled across mountains and valleys without ever losing their structure. In the silence of outer space, some atoms are stripped of their electrons by powerful radiation. These charged particles drift through the galaxy for millions of years before finding a place to rest. When they finally recombine, they release faint light that telescopes can detect from across the universe. Even the smallest reunion between particles can become a signal that crosses cosmic distance. Inside your stomach, hydrogen and carbon atoms form simple molecules that help break down food. The reactions happen slowly and steadily, allowing the body to absorb energy without discomfort. Digestion feels peaceful when atoms move in balance, supporting life through gentle transformations that continue even when the mind is at rest. On calm desert nights, the air cools and atoms in the sand release heat stored during the day. The temperature drops smoothly and the surface becomes cold beneath the stars. This change is not sudden. It is a quiet exchange of energy between Earth and sky, repeating endlessly as the planet turns. Stillness is created by cycles that never hurry. At the center of old galaxies, atoms fall towards supermassive black holes, but never reach them from our point of view. Time slows near the edge, stretching each moment into what appears to be an endless pause. The universe shows that even in places of extreme gravity, motion can appear peaceful, as if everything is waiting in silence. Inside the quiet stillness of deep caves, atoms and minerals reflect light in soft sparkles when touched by a single lantern. These crystals formed over thousands of years from water dripping slowly through stone. Each droplet left behind only a few particles, yet over time they built towering formations. The cave remains silent, shaped by patience rather than force. When atoms form clouds high in the sky, they gather around tiny dust particles and float together as droplets. These clusters drift gently with the wind, creating shapes that change without sound. Eventually, the droplets grow heavy enough to fall as rain, returning water to the earth in a calm cycle. Even storms begin with the quiet joining of atoms. In the cold shadows of Pluto, atoms of nitrogen expand and contract with the changing seasons. Though the temperature is far below anything found on Earth, the surface transforms slowly over decades. Frost evaporates into thin air and settles again in new places. The dwarf planet changes its appearance through the softest exchanges, guided by sunlight that takes hours to arrive. Inside your brain while you dream, atoms move along tiny pathways, carrying signals that shape thoughts and images. These signals travel without waking you, creating entire worlds inside your mind with complete silence. Even the wildest dream is powered by calm chemistry, allowing imagination to unfold while the body rests. In ancient riverbeds now turned to stone, atoms preserve the shapes of leaves and shells that once touched the mud. Fossils are not created by sudden events. They form as minerals replace organic material, slowly, layer by layer. The past becomes part of the present through the gentle patience of atoms that never rush to complete their work. When atoms form the thin layer of dew on morning grass, they gather from the cool air and settle gently on each blade. As the sun rises, the warmth gives them enough energy to evaporate, returning silently to the atmosphere. The cycle repeats every day without effort. Even the smallest droplets follow rhythms older than human memory, guided by temperature and light rather than intention. In distant star clusters, atoms collide softly inside glowing gas, creating gentle pressure that keeps the clouds from collapsing too quickly. Over millions of years, gravity slowly overcomes this balance, allowing new stars to form. The process is neither sudden nor violent. It is the universe taking its time, shaping light from darkness through quiet persistence. Inside your bloodstream, iron atoms bind to oxygen for only a brief moment before releasing it to the cells that need it. This exchange happens with perfect timing, repeating thousands of times every second. Yet you never feel the movement. Life depends on atoms knowing when to hold on and when to let go, all without making a sound. On the surface of icy comets, atoms of carbon and nitrogen are locked inside frozen gases. When the comet approaches the sun, the ice slowly turns into vapor, creating a glowing halo around it. The transformation is gentle, happening one particle at a time. Something that spent billions of years in darkness becomes visible through quiet change. In calm tidal pools, atoms in salt water drift through cracks in rock, carrying minerals that allow tiny plants and animals to survive between waves. The water may look still, but every moment is filled with small movements that maintain balance. Nature protects life not with strength, but with steady exchanges between particles that never rest. In the quiet shadows beneath ancient forests, atoms in fallen leaves break down slowly as microorganisms begin their work. The process releases nutrients back into the soil grain by grain. Nothing disappears suddenly. Even decay is gentle, returning matter to the earth in a cycle that has continued for millions of years without interruption or noise. When atoms form the thin shells of eggs, they arrange themselves into a lightweight structure strong enough to protect life inside. The balance between hardness and fragility comes from calcium atoms joining in a precise pattern. Once the shell is no longer needed, it breaks softly and returns to the ground, allowing the atoms to continue their quiet journey elsewhere. In the silence of deep space, atoms drift through regions so empty that a single particle may travel for centuries without meeting another. Yet these solitary atoms still obey the same laws found on Earth. They follow gentle paths shaped by gravity, waiting for the rare moment when they will join a star, a planet, or a cloud of gas. Even loneliness in the universe is peaceful. Inside your cells, tiny molecules called ATP store energy by holding atoms in a high-energy arrangement. When the body needs fuel, the atoms separate and release energy slowly and efficiently. This happens with every movement, every breath, and every heartbeat. You never feel the change, yet it sustains life from morning until sleep, guided by chemistry that remains calm and precise. At the bottom of polar oceans, atoms in drifting snow settle into layers that will one day become ice. Over time, pressure removes the air between them, turning loose crystals into solid glaciers. These massive structures move only a few inches each year, yet they reshape entire landscapes. Even the largest changes can begin with the quiet settling of atoms. When atoms form the gentle glow inside fireflies, they release energy in small packets of light called bioluminescence. The process is quiet and efficient, wasting almost no heat. Each tiny flash is the result of molecules settling into a lower energy state, like a sigh released into the night. Nature shines without flames or noise, using chemistry to create light that feels as soft as breathing. In the cool air after rainfall, atoms in water vapor cling to dust and pollen, creating the scent of wet earth called petrichor. The fragrance rises slowly as the ground dries, traveling through the air one molecule at a time. Nothing rushes. The smell is a reminder that even familiar experiences are shaped by particles moving gently through space, connecting the world in silence. Inside ancient amber, atoms preserve insects that lived millions of years ago. The resin hardened so gradually that tiny creatures became sealed within it without being crushed. Their delicate wings and bodies remain unchanged, protected by molecules that settled into place over time. The past survives not through force, but through the calm stillness of matter that refuses to decay. On distant exoplanets, atoms in the atmosphere absorb starlight in patterns that reveal their composition. Astronomers study these faint signals to learn whether water, oxygen, or methane might be present. Entire worlds are identified through the quiet interaction of light and atoms across unimaginable distances. Discovery can happen without ever touching what is being studied. Inside your ears, tiny hair cells rely on the movement of potassium and calcium atoms to send signals to your brain. Even the softest whisper is translated through chemistry too small to feel. Silence and sound both begin with particles shifting gently in fluid, proving that awareness depends on motion that happens beneath consciousness. In the quiet surface of polished mirrors, atoms of silver and aluminum align in a smooth layer only a few hundred nanometers thick. This arrangement allows light to reflect without scattering, creating a clear image from the slightest beam. The mirror does not change what it receives. It simply guides light softly, showing that even reflection is shaped by atoms resting in perfect stillness. When atoms form the soft powder of volcanic ash, they drift through the air like tiny seeds. The particles settle slowly across landscapes, enriching the soil over centuries. What begins as fire and eruption becomes the gentle foundation for forests and fields. Nature transforms itself, not through endings, but through quiet redistribution of matter that continues long after the noise has faded. Inside the calm rhythm of your heartbeat, magnesium and calcium atoms work together to help muscles contract and relax. The exchange happens with precise timing, allowing each beat to follow the next without effort. Even while you sleep, the pattern continues in silence. Life depends on atoms understanding balance, creating motion that feels like rest. Far beyond the Milky Way, atoms in ancient starlight travel across space for billions of years before reaching Earth. When the light finally touches a telescope, the atoms in the lens gently bend and guide it to form an image. What you see is not the past repeating loudly, but a quiet message carried through darkness, arriving with patience instead of urgency. In the peaceful growth of coral skeletons, atoms of calcium carbonate settle into place one by one. The reef expands only a few millimeters each year, building homes for countless species. Even when waves crash on the surface, the structure below remains calm. Strength is created through tiny additions that never rush, forming entire ecosystems from silent chemistry. When atoms form the gentle layers of chalk cliffs, they come from the shells of tiny sea organisms that lived millions of years ago. As their remains settled on the ocean floor, pressure slowly turned them into solid stone. The cliffs that stand today are made from countless quiet lives, preserved through the patient work of atoms resting in place. In the stillness of frozen deserts in Antarctica, atoms in ancient meteorites remain unchanged since their arrival from space. The cold protects them from weathering, allowing scientists to study material older than Earth itself. These stones carry the quiet memory of distant stars, waiting in silence until someone discovers them among the snow. Inside your bloodstream, tiny sodium and chloride ions help maintain balance in every cell. They move in careful patterns, ensuring that water flows where it is needed. You never notice their presence, yet without them, the body could not rest. Peace comes from particles doing their work with steady precision. On the dark side of the moon, atoms in the surface rock remain untouched by wind or rain. With no atmosphere to erode them, they sit unchanged for millions of years. Footprints left by astronauts still remain, preserved by stillness rather than protection. In places without disturbance, time moves gently. At the edges of expanding nebulae, atoms glow faintly as ultraviolet light from young stars energizes them. The soft colors that appear are not explosions, but quiet releases of energy returning to a calm state. The universe creates beauty slowly, allowing light to unfold in silence across vast distances. Inside quiet tidewater glaciers, atoms in melting ice join with seawater and drift gently into the ocean. The process happens slowly, unnoticed from moment to moment, yet over centuries it reshapes coastlines. Change in nature does not always arrive with sound. Sometimes it begins with a single drop moving from solid to liquid in complete silence. When atoms form the smooth surface of jade or marble, they align in patterns that reflect light softly. These stones take millions of years to develop deep underground, far from air and sunlight. When they are finally revealed, their calm appearance comes from atomic order that never rushed. Beauty can be the result of patience practiced at the smallest scale. In the thin air above mountain peaks, atoms spread far apart, making each breath feel lighter. The body adjusts slowly, allowing oxygen to move through blood with careful efficiency. The adaptation is gradual and silent, guided by chemistry that responds without urgency. Even in unfamiliar places, atoms work to keep balance. On distant icy worlds like Triton, atoms of nitrogen freeze into smooth plains that expand and contract with the seasons. The surface changes so quietly that it may take decades to notice any difference. The landscape moves in slow motion, shaped by gentle exchanges between solid and gas. A world can transform without ever appearing restless. Inside your thoughts, atoms help store memories by strengthening tiny connections between brain cells. These changes are subtle and continuous, happening even while you rest. Memory is not preserved through force. It is held in place by atoms shifting softly into new arrangements, allowing experiences to become part of who you are without disturbing your peace. In the silent layers of ancient lake beds, atoms settle into fine sediments that record each passing season. Light summer particles and darker winter grains stack gently over thousands of years, creating a quiet timeline of changing climates. Nothing forces these layers into place. They form through stillness and gravity, preserving history without a single sound. When atoms form the soft glow of auroras on distant planets like Jupiter and Saturn, they release light in colors the human eye can barely imagine. These displays happen high above the atmosphere, far from storms and wind. The glow is not a burst of energy, but a slow return to calmness after atoms absorb particles from the solar wind. Even the brightest lights in the universe begin with gentle motion. Inside the warm shells of growing seeds, atoms arrange themselves into new cells that divide silently. The process happens beneath soil where sunlight cannot reach. Roots spread and leaves form without rush or noise. Life begins as a quiet arrangement of particles finding their place, guided by chemistry that has never needed attention to succeed. On the surface of silent glaciers in Greenland, atoms in tiny air bubbles hold traces of ancient volcanic eruptions. These particles waited for thousands of years beneath layers of ice before scientists uncovered them. The past does not disappear. It settles slowly into matter, protected by stillness until someone is ready to listen. When atoms form the smooth surface of calm ocean waves, They rise and fall with rhythms shaped by the moon's pull. No two waves are the same, yet each movement follows the same quiet pattern. From a distance, the sea appears endless and peaceful, supported by countless particles moving together without urgency. When atoms form the gentle grains of silt, carried by slow-moving rivers, they travel for hundreds of miles before settling at the bottom of quiet deltas. Layer by layer, the land grows outward into the sea, not through force, but through patient accumulation. The shape of a coastline can change because of particles so small that their journey is almost invisible. In the silent vacuum beyond our solar system, atoms drift inside interstellar dust clouds that block starlight. These dark regions are not empty. They are nurseries where molecules slowly combine, protected from harsh radiation. What appears as darkness from afar is actually a place where the universe prepares new beginnings in complete stillness. Inside your bones as you sleep, atoms of calcium are removed and replaced in a slow cycle that keeps them strong. You never notice the transformation, yet it continues throughout your life. Renewal is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a steady exchange that allows the body to remain balanced without drawing attention. On frozen comets far from the sun, atoms of carbon and hydrogen may form complex organic molecules as they rest in deep cold. When the comet warms during its orbit, these molecules are released into space. Some scientists believe that this gentle dispersal may have delivered the ingredients for life to early Earth. The universe often shares its gifts quietly. In the calm stillness of winter lakes, atoms in the water beneath the ice remain liquid, even while the surface freezes. Fish and plants survive because the water below stays slightly warmer, protected from the cold air above. This balance exists because of the unique structure of water molecules, proving that life often depends on the quiet cooperation of atoms behaving in unusual but gentle ways. When atoms form the smooth surface of river stones, they are shaped by gentle water flowing over them for centuries. Each wave carries tiny particles that slowly polish the rock, softening sharp edges without force. What begins as rough stone becomes rounded through patience, showing that change can happen quietly through time rather than pressure. In the thin atmospheres of distant moons, atoms escape into space one by one. The loss is slow and steady, taking billions of years before any noticeable difference appears. Worlds evolve not through sudden events, but through the gradual movement of particles finding freedom. Even entire atmospheres can fade in silence. Inside your cells, atoms of hydrogen help maintain the pH balance that keeps life stable. They move between molecules with precise timing, ensuring that reactions happen smoothly. You never feel these adjustments, yet they continue every moment, keeping the body at peace. Balance is not forced. It is maintained through quiet cooperation. On ancient coastlines, atoms in seashells remain preserved long after the ocean has moved away. The shells turn into limestone, keeping the shape of the creature that once lived inside. The transformation requires no heat or noise, only pressure and time. The past settles gently into stone, waiting to be discovered. In the silent darkness beneath Saturn's rings, atoms and icy particles collide softly as they orbit the planet. The collisions are so gentle that the rings remain intact for millions of years. From far away, they look like solid bands, but up close, they are made of countless fragments moving in peaceful harmony. In the quiet depths of ancient peat bogs, atoms in fallen plants are preserved for thousands of years. The water removes oxygen, slowing decay until the material becomes soft and dark. What once swayed in sunlight now rests in silence, holding the memory of forests that no longer exist. Even stillness can protect life's history. When atoms form the outer surface of meteorites, they melt slightly as they enter Earth's atmosphere. The heat smooths the stone before it cools again, leaving tiny ripples called fusion crust. The transformation takes only seconds, yet the atoms inside remain unchanged from deep space. A brief moment of fire cannot erase billions of years of quiet travel. Inside your fingertips, atoms and nerve cells respond to the lightest touch. They send signals to the brain through gentle chemical changes that happen faster than thought. Even the feeling of calm requires countless particles moving in harmony, proving that peace is supported by motion rather than stillness. On cold dwarf planets like Eris, atoms in frozen methane reflect sunlight with a soft, blue tint. The surface remains unaltered for centuries, untouched by wind or liquid. A world can stay silent and unchanging, shaped only by the faint glow of distant stars. In the slow drift of tectonic plates, atoms in solid rock move only a few centimeters each year. Yet this quiet motion creates mountains, oceans, and earthquakes over millions of years. The largest features of Earth are shaped not by sudden force, but by steady movement hidden beneath our feet. When atoms form rust on old iron, they react with oxygen and water in a process that takes months or years. The metal changes color slowly, turning shades of orange and brown. Nothing breaks apart instantly. Even decay follows a calm path, guided by chemistry that unfolds without haste. In the silence of deep space, atoms freeze onto dust grains coated with ice. Over time, ultraviolet light helps them combine into simple organic molecules. These fragile structures may travel between star systems, waiting for a chance to land on a planet. Life's ingredients often begin their journey in darkness. Inside your bones, atoms of collagen form flexible fibers that absorb shock when you walk. These fibers are replaced gradually as old ones wear down. The renewal happens so slowly that the structure remains strong without interruption. Strength often comes from gentle maintenance rather than resistance. On the frozen surface of Europa, atoms in the ice crack and shift as tides from Jupiter stretch the moon. The movements are subtle, creating lines across the surface that look like patterns drawn in silence. Even without wind or sound, entire worlds can reshape themselves through quiet pressure. When atoms form the gases in a candle flame, they rise in smooth currents that twist like soft ribbons. The flame flickers, but the chemistry remains steady. Heat spreads through the room without force, creating warmth that fades slowly after the light disappears. In ancient sandstone cliffs, atoms in quartz grains are held together by minerals that formed during long-lost seas. Each layer marks a different era of Earth's past. The cliffs stand tall because atoms maintain their grip across millions of years, allowing time to be read in stone instead of words. Inside gentle ocean currents, atoms of salt move from one part of the sea to another, helping maintain balance across the planet. This exchange continues endlessly, regulating temperature and life. The ocean breathes through chemistry, not sound. At the edge of a black hole's shadow, atoms stretched by gravity emit the last traces of light before disappearing from view. The glow is faint and brief, yet it tells scientists about space and time. Even endings leave quiet footprints for the universe to study. In the still water of quiet ponds, atoms and dissolved minerals gather slowly on the surface of rocks and plants. Over time, thin layers of calcium create smooth coatings that shine when touched by sunlight. Nothing forces the change. It happens through steady contact. showing how nature reshapes itself without rushing. When atoms form tiny air pockets inside fresh snow, they trap sound and soften every noise. Footsteps become faint, and the world feels peaceful. The silence of winter comes from countless particles holding space between them, creating quiet through structure instead of emptiness. Inside gentle clouds of dust circling young stars, atoms combine into small clumps of rock and ice. These fragments collide softly and grow into larger bodies. Planets begin not from violent impacts, but from slow gathering that takes millions of years. The universe builds worlds with patience. On the smooth surface of seashells, atoms of calcium carbonate arrange themselves into repeating layers that curve like lines in a fingerprint. Each shell grows according to chemistry rather than intention. Beauty appears when atoms follow simple rules with quiet consistency. When atoms form the thin membranes around living cells, they create flexible barriers that protect without blocking. Water and nutrients move through with ease, allowing life to continue in balance. Survival depends on structures that are gentle rather than rigid. In the calm darkness of the ocean floor, atoms in methane ice remain frozen into solid crystals. When the temperature rises slightly, the ice releases gas that rises through the water. The change is smooth and controlled, guided by pressure and warmth instead of force. Inside your breath at night, atoms of oxygen enter the bloodstream and travel to every part of the body. Cells receive what they need, and the air returns quietly to the world. Rest is supported by a constant exchange that never asks for attention. On distant asteroids, atoms in metal cores cool so slowly that magnetic patterns remain locked inside. These patterns reveal how ancient space rocks formed when the solar system was young. Information can stay preserved for billions of years without sound or movement. When atoms form the surface of calm lakes at sunrise, light scatters across the water in soft colors. The reflection changes with the angle of the sun, shifting gently from gold to blue. Nothing in the scene is still, yet everything feels quiet. In the quiet space of your final thoughts before sleep, atoms continue their work inside every cell. They repair, restore, and balance without interruption. The body rests because matter knows how to remain steady, even when awareness fades. As the night settles and the world grows quiet, remember that everything around you are held together by the smallest pieces of the universe. Atoms move gently through your breath, your heartbeat, and your dreams, continuing their work without asking to be seen. You are part of a story that began long before Earth formed and will continue long after the stars fade. Let that thought bring ease to your mind and softness to your rest. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and allow the universe to hold you in its quiet rhythm. Sleep well, good night, and sweet dream.